It gives me great pleasure to introduce a dear friend and colleague, Dr. Jo Fay. Jo is joining us from Australia. She's had over 30 years of experience as an educator, teaching in schools and in preschools, as well as working with educators through the university sector. She has a lot of experience leading professional learning all over the world, particularly professional learning focused on supporting students in the early years in Europe, in the Asia Pacific, and in the Middle East. Jo has also conducted extensive research leading to a doctoral dissertation, and this in turn led to the publication of her book that you can see in the screen there. Her book is called Ways to Learn Through Inquiry, Guiding Children to Deeper Understanding, and it was published by the International Baccalaureate. I highly recommend it if you haven't already read it. Jo's thirst for understanding on how young children learn keeps her up to date with international and national developments in the early childhood education. So Jo, I'm going to hand over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Rachel.
Session today.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Rachel's, of course, in New Zealand. I'm in Australia, so we're conducting this together. So welcome from everybody around the world. I just looked at the chat and seen, wow, Turkey, Switzerland, South Africa, the Philippines. Yeah, amazing. Myanmar even, wonderful. So I'd like to, first of all, acknowledge the people of Australia, the people who we are indebted to in this country, because they've been here for 60,000 years, much longer, of course, than the white people of Australia, really very short time. So in Australia, it's customary to offer an acknowledgement to the Indigenous people whose lands I am speaking from today, recognising they and their ancestors have been here for over 60,000 years. So I'd like to acknowledge that I'm broadcasting from the traditional lands of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I also extend that respect to all Aboriginal people in Australia and all First Nations people throughout the world. And I have a strong wish for peace in our world. And while we're thinking about children and families, while we're looking at this beautiful photograph, I ask that you please not screenshot or video any of the material tonight or today in your country that you see online, to respect the rights of the children and the families who have agreed for me to show their images tonight. This is a centre that you'll see where I was teaching, and most of the children are 4 years old, a few of them going on 5. So you'll see those examples coming up. So thank you to those families who've agreed to let me show their photographs and their videos. So just before we go on with the presentation, I just wanted to mention that you may already know, or you may not, that I run 2 online courses for Professional Learning International. One is called The Power of Play, International Conversations, and the other one is called Playful Literacies, Honouring Children's Agency. So I'll have the dates for you, and Rachel will put them in the chat as well. The Power of Play starts in October this year, 2024, and the Playful Literacies starts in February next year, in 2025. So let's go to the first photograph that I want to show you to get us all in the frame of mind of thinking about play and thinking about children. The play of young children is their highest achievement. In their play, children invent the world for themselves and create a place for themselves in it. They are recreating their pasts and imagining their futures, while grounding themselves in the reality and the fantasy of their lives, here and now. And here we have a child aged 4. We'll call him Eric. He's just said to another child, Sarah, who's playing with, and he said, "I'll look after the baby. You go and have a sleep." So what a beautiful gesture in his play for his partner to have a sleep, and he looks after the baby. And I would say that Eric, from observing him, is lost in the flow of play, at the same time exploring his identity in the role that he's taking on in this play. And Scott Eberly and Stuart Brown have written a publication called The Power of Play, Losing and Finding Ourselves in Everyday Play. That was written this year and published in January 2024. At play, we lose ourselves, but at play, we also find ourselves. So here's another group of children, and they are also losing themselves in play. This is small world play, which means they're playing with small items. As you can see, some animals that they've chosen from the cupboard, some sea animals, and they've chosen some zoo animals. And what they've decided to do, all of their own ideas, not instigated by the teachers, they've decided to pull some fabric and some frames, some boards that they used for their mathematics, actually. They're using those in their small world play. And loose parts, other loose parts that they've used, pieces of wood, offcuts of wood, they've made small zookeepers to look after the animals. And on the right, in the photograph, you can see Amy has cut out some red paper, and the red paper is for food for the animals, and the yellow paper too. So they're creating their own props as well in this small world play. And when I was watching and listening, I heard one of the children transform himself into a shark. So he wasn't just finding a role in the play as a zookeeper, he was also deciding to be a shark. You will hear him say at the end, "I'm a shark."
I'm trying to can we do this? I'm a shark.
So not only in small world play of playing with the small animals, but also in role as a shark.
I'm trying to can we do this? I'm a shark.
And that was his second language that he was speaking in English. And here's a couple of children whose languages are very interesting too. The child on the left, Calypso, her main language is Greek. She also speaks English. And Francine on the right has just arrived from France, and she speaks a few words of English, but mostly French. And you can see the photograph on the right, that play is a universal language, that they can play together, even though they don't yet have a common language, and laugh and have some joyous moments. So Sarah Smilansky and Leah Shafatya, they say that sociodramatic play, which is the kind of play that we've been seeing, they say that that is characterised by a joyous, cooperative working atmosphere. And just to clarify, sociodramatic play is that they are socialising together, they are together, and that the dramatic play is the drama, the things that happen in the play that make it interesting. And sociodramatic play is also called make-believe play, sometimes fantasy play. It has many different names, but today I'll be calling it sociodramatic play. Now, my question is, but is it always joyous and cooperative when their children are playing? And I'm sure many of you wouldn't be here if you didn't work in early childhood with young children. You know that sometimes the play is not always joyous and is not always cooperative. So we'll leave that thought for a moment, and I'll just let you know the overview of what we'll be doing in this webinar today. The guiding questions for the webinar are: what is the difference between self-regulation and self-control? What is the role of the environment in promoting self-regulation? And what are the dimensions of play and playful learning? So I'm hoping in the time we have together today that we'll be able to look at these. So firstly, what is the difference between self-regulation and self-control? Very good question. So in this preschool where I was teaching, we usually put out loose parts, mostly natural materials, wood and pine cones and anything we could collect from our neighbourhood or children brought in. Usually that didn't cost any money. But the children this particular day spied something in the storage shed in the corner, and we had sort of hidden it away because we didn't use it very much and it was quite complicated to construct. But the children begged the teacher there, Matthew, please, can we have it out, please. And he said, yes, okay, it takes quite a long time to set up, but as long as you help, we can do it together. So something novel, something new, and a lot of children wanted to play with it. Of special interest to Luke on the right-hand side was the crane. And he just fell in love with the crane, became fascinated with the crane and wanted to play with it all day. He even wasn't very happy when Charles came along and started pouring water near his crane. You can see he looks a little bit unhappy about, somebody disturbing his little patch that he'd decided he was going to play in today. So what happened was a little while later I came back and I saw that a lot of children had gathered around this area. And of course, Luke had to take turns with the crane. Now, I don't normally, and those of you who know my work, I show children in joyous, beautiful, happy environments playing. But in this case, when we're talking about self-regulation, I really had to look hard to find a video to show you some children who had become dysregulated, so slightly dysregulated, or sometimes another word is heightened. So their behaviour and their sort of sense of justice, I suppose, about both wanting to have a turn on the crane at the same time is shown in this video. I'll play it for you now.
I'm not sure. It could, yeah, look, this head is here. You go. Then. Oh, it is this, yeah. That's apparently the line. I just had a seen that.
Lucas, you had a long turn and Eli asked you very nicely for a turn. So can you please give Eli a turn and then he'll give you a turn again?
So I had to go to explain it.
So, no, he didn't have a long turn, did you, Eli?
Do you?
I just had one turn.
And how many turns did he have?
He had 5.
5. So, Lucas, you had 5 turns.
No, I didn't. I have 2 turns.
2 turns and he had 1. So whose turn is it now? Eli's turn now. Just a short time. Thank you, Eli. And then it will be Lucas's turn again.
I recommend.
I'm just watching the engineering. And you can see there, as he's given up his turn on the crane, he hasn't just sat there and waited for his turn to come back again. He's gone over to play somewhere else for a short time. And I thought, that's a good resolution that he's moved on to play with something else. So I went away to look at some other children and do some more play watching around the preschool. But when I came back, I noticed that the same thing happened again, that the 2 children, Eric, we'll call on the left, and Luke on the right, were again in conflict about the crane. So this crane was obviously something very popular that they both wanted to play with. Let's see what happened.
My turn. It's actually not me, Jackie. I only had 1 turn.
Eli, you've had 2 turns now. You've had 2 turns, and Lucas has had 2, so it's Lucas's turn.
And then we have 5 turns. That's for both.
Then you wait a little bit, and then it's your turn. So again, that question of me thinking, I wonder if I should intervene in this. I wonder if they can work it out themselves. But what Stuart Shanker says is that pro-social behaviour is stressful. What makes the pro-social demand stressful for the children is the internal struggle that they often experience, the effort they must make to resist an impulse in order to put the interests of others ahead of their own. So in this case, both of the children were having some difficulty putting the interests of others ahead of their own. So according to Stuart Shanker, who works at the Merit Centre in Ontario, Canada, he is a professor of philosophy and psychology. When in conflict, the members of the group are operating in what is called the red brain, which is the limbic system. In this state, they're not using their blue brain, the thinking brain, or the neocortex. So just to explain this a little bit more, there is a triune model, it's called, developed by Paul MacLean, who was a neuroscientist back in the 60s, actually. And he says there are 3 parts to the brain: the reptilian, or the primitive part of the brain, the limbic system, sometimes called the emotional brain, the reactive part of us. And with children, we often call it the feeling part of the brain. And then the 3rd part is the neocortex, or sometimes called the new cortex, the executive part of our brain that is responsible for language, abstract thought, imagination in play, and creativity, which is what we also find in play. With children, we often call it the thinking brain. And you may have heard of Dr. Dan Siegel, who explains about the brain. And he uses a fist, a hand, and he says, this is the brain stem, he says to the children. This is the limbic system. The amygdala goes in there. That's the feeling brain. And the thinking brain goes over the top like that. So sometimes when the thinking and feeling brain aren't working together and just the feeling brain is evident, that's when sometimes children become dysregulated or heightened, which I'm sure we see in our daily work with children. So Stuart Shanker believes, and his research at the Merit Centre has certainly shown this over many decades, that when children are in red brain, there isn't much point discussing with them because they're not thinking. It's not the time to do a great analysis of, now, why aren't you taking turns? And I saw you taking turns last week. I wonder why you're not doing it today. It's not really the time for those in-depth discussions because the children are really not thinking and not able to take in what you're saying very often. But on the other hand, Dr. Louise Porter, who's a psychologist in Australia, in Sydney, she reminds us, do not be responsible for overseeing the turn-taking arrangement completely. Help the children to be responsible for turn-taking. Otherwise, you will end up being judge and jury in a constant stream of disputes, while the children will not gain the skills to solve these themselves. So I also thought of that and thought, I wonder perhaps there would be another way to look at this, particularly when the children have calmed. What would be the kinds of things that I could talk to them about? So the development of social self-regulation, of the children's self-regulation, is highly dependent on co-regulation. So what are the things that we are saying to the children? What are the messages that we're giving them? Not when they're in red brain and they're arguing or in dispute about a particular object or about something that's happening in their lives, but at a calm time, when they've calmed down and they're more able to, express their feelings and, to think with us about what the solution might be. So co-regulation during a conflict moment. Dr. Robin Dolby, who's also a psychologist in Sydney, she says, how can you make a firm entry as a teacher, as an educator, as a co-educator, into the conflict moment where you convey a confident presence? So your sort of stance, I suppose, is I'm here. My job is to keep you safe and you safe. And at the end, how can you make a firm exit as a teacher where you restate your availability to those children so they feel secure? So Robin suggests saying something like, it's always okay for you to come to me. So her research into the circle of security and the circle of repair over also many decades in Australia shows that if educators restate their availability, indicating I'll be here to come back to, it would help build the child's security. So it kind of makes sense. So we are there as co-regulators, facilitating children's play skills, facilitating them, for example, taking turns. So what you'll see in a moment is I've gone back to those children when it's been very calm and I've talked to them about, what do you think happened before? And they said, yeah, well, we both wanted to have a turn on the crane. And so what did you do? Oh, we took turns. Yeah. And one thing I learned from Lillian Katz many years ago in Adelaide was that there sometimes is a little confusion amongst adults and children about sharing and taking turns. So if children are having some conflict over one object, like the crane, sometimes people say, oh, share. But really sharing, is that cutting the crane in half? Often I joke with children, if there's a stethoscope they both want, and they say, well, sharing is caring. Shall we share? Shall we cut it in half? No, Joe, don't cut it in half. Oh, we need to take turns. You have the stethoscope, and then when you're finished, I have the stethoscope. So even that clarification of the terminology about taking turns is very important with this age and younger, and sometimes older as well. So the other thing that I was thinking from Stuart Shanker was, I wonder if there's some stress around for Luke. why does he not want to let that crane go? Why is he so fixated on having it? And he's the youngest of 10 children, would you believe? And so I said to him, is there anything worrying you about not having this crane? And he said, yeah, the big kids will come and they won't let me have a turn. And I said, do you think the big children in the preschool will come and not let you have a turn? No, they won't let me have a turn. So I said, look, I think it's okay. There's some children in the sandpit. There's some children doing some mud play. They're very busy. They're not so interested in the water course. So perhaps if I stay around a little bit. And he said, yes, you stay around. Make sure I can have some more turns. And I said, I'll stay for a short time, but if you need me, I'll be able to come back if you come and get me and say there's a problem. So this is what happened when I think the stress was reduced and he felt quite calm about waiting. And you'll hear him say, and I'll stop it at the end, I'm just waiting for the crane. He doesn't want the other crane on the other side. He just wants the crane that Eric has.
But after him, I'm glad to go here. It's a flying crane.
The flying crane.
Wait, what's a flying crane?
Flying crane. Can you see the crane that Nicholas has? Nicholas, show us the crane. Look, Eli, the crane is lifted off, so it's flying in the air.
And this part is flying in there too. What must you see what I should expect? That's an auto flying fast. And this is a real flying boat.
Some. Wow.
Don't say this bike.
So what he says is, the boy on the left, Eric, says, do you want to play with this boat? But of course, we all know he wants to play with the crane. And he says, nah, I'm waiting for that. And he points at the crane. And I noticed he was much more relaxed and the children were laughing, as you can see, and clarifying what a flying crane is. So I felt that the relationship was building between them and that Luke, through the intervention, through the co-regulation, was learning to wait, learning some impulse control, learning to wait for his friend to finish. And perhaps we could have used a timer, but at that point, I didn't think of introducing it and they didn't either. So it was a way of him learning through self-regulation, not through punishment, not through any rewards, just through self-regulation, and the stress was identified that perhaps he was worried that he would never get a turn again if the bigger children came along. If maybe that's what happened at home, living with 10 children. But Shanker says to us, be a stress detective. What might the stress be that the child is under? And why are they showing this kind of behaviour now? Why and why now? So I want you to comment in the chat box if you would like to. You don't have to. What do you do to support children in challenging situations? It might be like the one that I showed with turn taking. It might be with other challenging situations that you encounter with your young children that you teach. But I think it's important for us to think about the ways that we support children and not to think about it as sort of behaviour management, but to think about it more in terms of what stresses might they be under? What situations might have created the feeling that they have that they're not being heard or that they might not get a turn? Some people have written, try to understand them, reflection routine, give them time to calm, time to talk. Assure them that I'm always there for support. Give them time to calm down and then verbalise their feelings. Yeah, that's a great one, Hippa. Give them the space they need to calm down and be able to use their words. Yeah. Divert one of the children's attention to another object. Yes, that's another strategy. Fatima, usually in early years classroom situations, I first calm them and then talk. Exactly. Reassure them that the situation can be handled. Yes. That's what Robin Dolby says, come in with a firm belief of I'm here to help you and we can solve this situation. Dialogue and show that you understand them, respect their feelings. Yes, in Marta Mayo, very important that children feel heard, that you see them and you hear them. Make them feel supported and cared for and let them release their emotions first. Yes, emotions, we have to acknowledge that emotions are, they're their emotions. We shouldn't try and stifle them. We should let those emotions come out. We're like the emotion coach, I suppose you say. Make them understand they are friends and they have to take care of each other. Yes, very good point, that it's a community and we're all working together and living and playing together. Yeah, thank you for those. So what Stuart Shanker says is it's essential that we look at students through a different lens, to shift from thinking in terms of behaviour management to figuring out why we see certain behaviours and what can be done to help these students learn to self-regulate. Just as I did with Luke, being a stress detective, thinking what could it be in his situation that makes him nervous that he won't ever get a turn with that crane again, and then addressing that. Are you worried about that? And helping him to understand that there are people here to help him if that does happen, and for him to learn some skills of negotiation. So this is from Stuart Shanker, and he says that when thinking of a growth mindset and self-regulation, and I won't read all of them, I'll read a few of them, instead of thinking with a fixed mindset, he or she needs to learn some self-control. With a growth mindset, he needs help with self-regulation. So instead of thinking she's giving me a hard time or he's giving me a hard time, thinking, well, they're having a hard time, aren't they? They're having a hard time with their emotions, managing their emotions. How can I help? The next one, his behaviour comes out of the blue, or her behaviour, or their behaviour. Let's look deeper for patterns and setting events. Yeah, again, Stuart Shanker is asking us to look deeper for what kind of patterns are there. Has this happened before? What kinds of things have you seen in your observations, in your documentation of this child? What are the conversations you're having with their parents and caregivers? So she, he, they just needs to calm down. But does that child know how to calm themselves? Do they know what calm feels like? Our other mindset might be, oh, he won't ever learn self-regulation, rather than how can I help with self-regulation? Perhaps a child who's had trauma, where you really have to have decrease your judgment and increase your curiosity about that child by finding out more about them, what their interests are, what their passions are, and from their families as well, of course, their funds of knowledge. So Stuart Shanker lists and makes it into a beautiful diagram for us, 5 practices of self-regulation. So the first one is reframe the behaviour. So rather than even thinking of it as behaviour, thinking of it as a child as they present to you. What stress might they be under? What are the stressors that might be in their life? They might be emotional, they might be social, they might be pro-social. And how can we help to reduce that stress for that child or those group of children? And he presents 5 domains of self-regulation. Here we have the first one, biological. So the activity or level of energy in the human nervous system. Emotion, feelings and moods in both negative and positive realms. Cognitive, mental processes such as memory, acquisition and retention of information. Problem solving and impulse control. So impulse control is a very big one. If you work with the 0 to 5 and even 6-year-olds, you'll know that that is something that children struggle with. But we don't want to impose any sort of hard and fast rules. We want to find out how we can help children like Luke to manage impulses from a self-reg perspective. Social, understanding, assessing and responding to social cues in a socially appropriate manner. And pro-social, which is what I mentioned earlier and Dr. Shanker talked about earlier, that's more about social acceptance, friendship, empathy. So in order to take turns with another child, a child has to have empathy. They have to put their, I suppose, their own shoes, they have to put themselves in the other child's shoes to know that other child would also like to have a turn. Oh, so this is the development of pro-social skills, empathy, and also co-regulating in peer-to-peer interactions. So self-regulation, interestingly enough, Dr. Shanker says that there are 447 different definitions of self-regulation, and he says 446 of them are about self-control. That's his analysis, which is interesting. So his sort of definition of self-regulation, which I really like because I think it really works for us in the early years, how effectively and efficiently a child deals with stress and then recovers. So we saw Luke, the stress he was under, wanting to have a turn, wanting to insist to having a turn, holding onto that crane, and then realizing that, I am going to get more turns and it is going to be my turn later on as well. And he summarizes that self-regulation is the ability to understand, monitor, and modify energy levels, emotions, attention, social interactions, and pro-social thinking and behaviour. So what is that difference between self-regulation and self-control? So self-regulation seeks to identify and reduce the causes of problems in mood, thought, and behaviour. And self-regulation, in terms of what Dr. Shanker is talking about, is always searching for hidden stressors. What might the stress be? Is the child hungry? Is the child thirsty? Is the child tired? Has the child not had enough sleep? Whereas self-control seeks to inhibit or manage such problems only when they arise. So self-control looks only at surface behaviours, not really in depth at what the child's reality might be. And self-regulation seeks to reduce the effort required to reach effortful control. Self-regulation is about looking non-judgmentally at one's impulses, worries, and fixations, whereas self-control encourages battling weaknesses to exercise effortful control. Self-control is about being judged by oneself as much as by others. So that gives you a little hint. You'll find more on the internet if you would like to pursue this further. It's a very interesting area to think about the difference between self-regulation and self-control. And Louise Porter reminds us when we might not perhaps be considering all of the children's different needs, that if a child has attention deficit or sensory processing disorder, in her approach, which Rachel is going to put or has put the link in the chat if you would like to look at any of her sort of question and answer, frequently asked questions. It's a brilliant website. It has lots of information, particularly about autism, about sensory processing disorders. And her approach is called the guidance approach. So it starts with the assumption that children do well when they can. If they're not doing well, this is not because they can't, not because they are trying to be disruptive. They do not need incentives like rewards and punishments to motivate them to behave well. They are already doing the best they can. They simply cannot calm their nervous system by willpower alone. So that impulse control, it can't be calmed by willpower alone because of the inflammation in their brain and really throughout their whole body to various degrees. So certainly follow up that, cue with Louise Porter if you'd like to learn more about the guidance approach. You will find some fabulous information on her website. So let's think about stressors and the kind of stresses that perhaps that child that I mentioned, Luke, was under. So children who find social interaction stressful tend to shy away from it and therefore don't get the social experiences necessary for learning its nuances. The stress is often sensory stress, resulting from difficulty processing sensory information. Therefore, the key to helping these children is a scaffolding approach with the goal of decreasing children's stress load so that they will not only want to engage in social interaction, but they will want to do so, in the future. So continue to do so. So sociodramatic play, which I've been talking about today, builds children's capacity for attention and impulse control. There we go, that word again. What about the children who have difficulty with this type of play, with socialising with other children, with using their imagination, playing, negotiating? These are the children who most need and would most benefit from this type of play experience. The nature of adult intervention is critical. So now we're also moving into thinking about play and playful. So this is what I would define as play, where the children are using some things that they've chosen, like we saw in the small world play before. But this is not small world play. This is more the large world play, where the children are interacting with each other and interacting with some objects. So you will see that the children in this particular scenario, that for a second, the children in this scenario are the same ones who were in the scenario before. They're the children, Eric, with the elephant here. And you'll see that Luke, who doesn't often play with many children, he usually plays by himself, he has sat quietly down with his little pig. And I've thought, great, he's going to start to play with other children rather than perhaps solitary play, which he often did too. So we'll see what happens here. No, we won't. I think I'm having a bit of trouble with this video tonight. My husband's computer. There we go. Let's try.
He can't do this, so he needs to go to the doctor.
Okay, so what would help him to be able to do that, do you think?
I think a bandage.
A bandage. And what's wrong with your pig?
He got him. I want him blue.
Blue. You want him to make him blue?
Yeah.
And what do you...
He turned pink.
He turned pink. Hello, doctor. Would you like to help look after the pig? It turned pink.
So I know how to turn back to blue because this tablet that makes him blue.
Okay. Would you want to try it? She's got a tablet to make him blue.
I go on to work.
Do you think that would work?
Turn for blue.
His turn. Now, I just want to stop there for a moment. This was a beautiful moment because this particular child, as I was saying, Luke, with the 10 brothers and sisters, even though I'm sure they played at home, this was for him playing with some children of his own age and being included. He felt included in the play, and he was able to talk about, the pig that he wanted to turn blue, and then it did turn blue. And the child who was with him, Kenzie, was a play leader. She reached out to him and said, I've got a tablet to make your pig blue. Whoops. We're still having trouble with this tonight. Sorry about that. I have to get my husband to come and help me with this one. No, there we go. So she comes back and says, I know how to get him blue. This tablet will make him blue. Would you want to try it? She's got a tablet to make him blue.
I go on to work.
Do you think that would work?
Turn for blue.
He's turning blue. That was a quick tablet. That worked.
Well, it is for the matching. There. He's pink again.
Pink again?
Not again.
Well, have we got any more blue tablets, Doctor?
I need to bandage on his. I'll just see. Bandage.
Bandage. Put a bandage on pink.
Sorry? Is it what it is as well? Yes, we do have an outdoor one.
Oh.
We go. There's two things that come with. We have some tops and necks. They're not last for you. Oh, thanks.
And at the end, oh, thanks. So I felt that he really appreciated being included in the play and, wanting to be part of the social group. So I suppose one caution, and I'm sure you all know this as early childhood teachers, that even though research shows that the quality of the adult interactions is, important, but it must be sensitive and child-directed. So the children's ideas were about the pig and the elephant and about the blue tablet, not my ideas. I wasn't imposing my ideas on them. And when adults become too bossy or insensitive to the needs of the children, so following their play in the moment, then children tend to lose interest and stop playing. So we've already asked one of the other questions about what play is, because we've seen some play tonight. And I'll get onto a little bit more in a moment about that if we have time. So according to Louise Porter, although we typically think of self-regulation as being about down-regulating distressing feelings like we saw earlier, it's also about up-regulating pleasant ones. So we saw that Luke was having very pleasant feelings and up-regulating. So that's one of the important things that Shanker talks about is once we've reduced the stress, thinking about how we can help those children to be social and pro-social, but also restoring their energy. And play is a way of restoring energy. You'll see this one on the left. So some people have already said this in the chat earlier, soothing and calming children during meltdowns, using calming activities, providing a sanctuary, a way where they can engage in a favourite activity, and giving them some physical comfort, if appropriate, such as a hug or a handhold. So here's a child who chose to rest here. This was where he decided, after he'd had an emotional sort of meltdown, some dysregulation, he took all the blocks out of the block trolley, and then he set up his pillows and cushions and everything and had a rest in there. And in the Power of Play workshop, you'll see many, many more examples of this kind of thing where children are having the agency to choose their own places to rest. So when you have helped the child to be calm, it's important to restore energy. So these are all in the Power of Play workshop. So I won't spend too much time on these because I elaborate in the workshop in the Power of Play course about these. So here's Uzma doing some yoga with the children. Here's some children who've chosen a place to rest outside with sleeping bags in the winter. They're snuggling up with some non-fiction books that they've chosen. And here's a child on a swing. He's chosen to help himself to regulate by being on the swing. And this also I talk about quite a bit in the Power of Play course. So I won't read the first one out. That's in the Power of Play course. But a new one that I didn't include in the course, which I've just discovered, is that the quickest and best way to calm the vestibular system is through slow, gentle, rhythmic swinging from a single hung point. Swinging on a swing for at least 15 minutes can last up to 8 hours in the central nervous system. Therefore, swinging produces the longest benefits for a child with sensory processing disorder. So any children who are dysregulated would benefit from a swing. And if you have a look, there is a timer right on the bark there, a blue one, a sand timer, but we didn't use it for that particular child. And everybody knew when it was his turn to go and have a swing, nobody used the timer. He could stay on the swing as long as he wanted. That really helped him to calm, but also to restore his energy. So what is the role of the environment in promoting self-regulation? So I won't do that one. So sensory integration theory indicates that proprioceptive input helps to calm and organise the brain. The results in the input being suggested as a strategy to help children calm their bodies down and regulate. Heavy work can be a good sensory strategy for a child that experiences sensory overload, both before and after activity they find overloading. So occupational therapists often recommend it for a child, particularly children with autism. So heavy work, if you're not sure what that term is, occupational therapists use the term heavy work. They are often referring to any activity that activates our proprioceptors. So our proprioceptors are parts of our joints and muscles that receive feedback when we move. They tell us the position of our limbs and they let us know how much or little force we can use. So this is an example, just one example I'll give today of heavy work, because in the Power of Play course, there are many, many, many examples of heavy work, but this is one I didn't use. These are some children who are climbing a rope as part of their heavy work to build their core strength. Can he touch the tree? Can he touch the tree on his way up? Yes. Let's see how Liam goes. Can he touch the tree? Yes. Next one, Xavier. Very quick. Let's see, Xavier, can he touch the tree? Is he going to make it? Here comes Archer. Can he catch the tree? Can he reach the top? Let's see if he can reach the top. So I was going to ask you to provide any examples of heavy work that you provide for the children you teach. So if you'd like to put that in the chat box, and I will keep going. Otherwise, we won't get through all those questions for tonight, and I'll have a look once they're in there. So just while some people are writing in the chat box about any examples of heavy work, I was thinking about the environment as well. And again, in the Power of Play course, we have many, many examples of environments, but this is one I didn't include, which was gardening. So here the children have water that we have a special tub. That's the amount of water that can be used in one morning. because we have water restrictions. We're a very dry country, my part of the country is very dry. So you see the children, they know this is a place they can come to restore energy, to do some gardening, to be calm, to do some watering. And one day, some of the children came along when all the plants had grown and said, "Oh, we want to pick one of those pansies, Joe. Can we do that?" And I said, "Of course you can." So they picked the pansies, and these children started working together to figure out how to make the exact colour of the pansy. And so this is an example of children, upregulating, having beautiful, pleasant feelings about their environment and about their friendships.
And I don't know what's gonna make snapple. I don't know where it's gonna make. Oh, that's it. Hey, it makes apple. And that's it. It makes apple pumpkin. I don't see like apple on the other side. Look here.
So within the safe and secure context of the arts, children can explore the unexpected, the unfamiliar, the unsettling, the worrying, the exciting and novel aspects of our world. They discover that with self-regulation comes the mental and emotional space for moments of awe, joy and wonderment, which furthers overall well-being. So here you have, again, children working together, and that flow is so beautiful, straight from the garden, that very calm environment, straight to the painting table. They wanted painting outside, and then back to the garden. So the kind of environments that we create help children with their self-regulation. So I'm just going to flick through 2 or 3 slides about play, because I've covered a lot about play, but perhaps I would like to say what play is not. And then if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and Rachel will collect the questions. If you have anything that you would like clarified or any questions for me, we'll have about 8 minutes at the end to have a couple of questions. So play. So while the educational field has never come to a single definition of play, there seems to exist some agreement about the features of play: pleasurable, process-oriented, intrinsically motivated, meaningful, iterative, so it repeats very often, but it can be one-off as well, and controlled by the child. So that's probably the most important thing, is that it's controlled by the child. So what is not play? So the one element that researchers agree cannot be missing is the voluntary nature of play. That is, the child choosing what to play. So in the words of Betty Jones in America, a big play guru, if it isn't voluntary, it isn't play. Therefore, while setting up exploration centres in early childhood settings and assigning children to certain centres may have educational merit, it is not play. So if I say to a group of children, you all go to the sand play, this group of children go to the water play, this group of children go to dramatic play, that's not play, because I've chosen which children will go to which centres, even if you rotate them. So playful, I would say that's playful. So it's playful because the experiences that you've designed, the water play, the sand play, the dramatic play, are all play experiences, but the child hasn't chosen to go and do them. So I would call them playful. So playful activities are controlled at least partially, not by a child, but by an adult. So the last 2 quotes before I finish. When the luckiest players are most deeply immersed and poised, individually or when playing together, they get lost in a state of flow. They may experience a sense of timelessness. Now, I'm not going to say the famous person who said that because I can't pronounce the name. And in this pleasurable suspension of awareness of the passage of time, the player and the play, the action and the awareness may become one. And that's what we started with. At play, we lose ourselves, but at play, we also find ourselves too. So my wish for all of you is that each of you is motivated to embrace play as an integral part of a child and an adult's daily world. So we need to play too. We will be better individually and communally for including its vital presence during these extraordinarily challenging and uncertain times. So again, I would love you to join me in my courses, the first one being the Power of Play, starting in October, as I said earlier, and the second one, Playful Literacies, starting in February next year. So, Rachel, I'm going to stop sharing now. Let's see what happens. Yay. Here we are. I can see everyone. Oh, I can see all these beautiful faces now. Couldn't see them
I
before.
know. It's your masterclasses, Joe, always give me kind of food for thought and things to remind myself of. Although I'm not teaching early years, I have 3 quite young children at home, one who is 3, and sometimes supporting her and regulating behaviour is something that I need a reminder of as an adult. The best way is to support that.
Beautiful.
All right. There was a question that has just come through in the chat, and for those who haven't posted their question in the chat, just pop it into the chat section rather than the Q&A, so that I'm not watching in 2 different places. So if you've got one in the Q&A, if you can just post it into the chat, that would be great. So the first one is, can we relate play-based learning to project-based learning? And if so, how?
Oh, that's a very good question. I was looking at something that Sean Walker, hello Sean, if you're on the call, posted some comments about a continuum of play that somebody put on LinkedIn a couple of days ago. And I did think these definitions are quite challenging. There is a person, Rachel White, who has produced a document called The Power of Play. And I think Rachel was going to put that in the chat at some point. She actually goes through and describes all sorts of different play, and she also compares it to the project approach. And I'm pretty sure the Scott Aberley and the Stuart Brown Power of Play that was published in January 2024, I'm pretty sure that also goes through definitions of what different kinds of play is all about. I would say it's probably, thinking of Sean Walker, if you're on, Sean, I wish you were here, you could be doing Venn diagrams for us, but play-based learning is very broad, and I see that as probably the kind of the largest circle, whereas project-based learning would probably be a smaller circle inside that, play-based learning. And the connection, is that what you want to know, Rachel, the connection between project-based and play-based learning? Yeah. So in my thinking, if you have a project like we have, for example, where I'm teaching, we had a sand project and we delivered all the sand to one corner of the preschool, and the children shoveled it into wheelbarrows, and then they had to work out all the numeracy of how heavy they are, how light they are. They took all the sand to the sand pit. So over about 3 weeks, the sand pile went down, down, down. So that project of what I would call the sand project was part of the play-based learning in the whole centre. So I would say it's perhaps a smaller entity, I guess. Yeah, hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica has asked if we can recommend a book that focuses on play and bridges towards literacy, preparing children for elementary school with an inquiry-based approach. I could highly recommend Joe's book for that one. And Joe, maybe if you can just flash this first slide up again. Can you share your screen with the first slide so they can see that book cover? And also Joe's course. So the course Playful Literacies that Joe has created is an online course, and that is very much about how do we use play as a full playful literacy as a way to prepare students for more formal literacy that follows, and that's appropriate for younger students right through to kindergarten, grade 1. And I think grade 2 is where you went to Playful Literacies.
Yes.
There's a couple of people in the chat also, Joe, asking about older children. So what is the role of play for upper elementary or even middle school students, and how do we support older students in regulating behaviour?
That's 2 questions in one. Someone's done a good job there. So I think upper primary, I guess the schools I've worked in, the teachers have been reluctant to call it play because parents in some of the schools, maybe don't have such a positive mindset about play, the word play. So they would tend to call it investigation time. So I think it probably, STEM time, when you've got your STEM work, the children might be constructing things. They might be, creating a play or animation with those things that they've constructed. So I think it kind of morphs into something slightly different, but it really depends on your parent body and what their kind of beliefs are and how free they are about what how children should be learning. Yeah, I would say that whole investigation, science, STEM, technology is a really lovely way to get children involved in making their own props and then perhaps creating their own plays and animations. That's probably one idea. And regulation with older students, I think the same principles apply. And if you look up anything about Stuart Shanker online, you'll find wonderful, wonderful videos, and they go right through from youngest children right through to adolescents to adults. So definitely keep an eye on anything Stuart Shanker on the internet. I would say, pick and choose a little bit, but certainly has things about those age groups.
Fantastic. And last question, can you recommend some heavy work activities in day-to-day life?
Oh, actually, I anticipated somebody would ask that. So I actually have a list written out here somewhere, if I can find it. Or else I can just do it at the top of my head. And I got it here. No, I haven't got it. I bet you someone asked about heavy play, heavy work. No, but I can remember. So things for heavy work in everyday life: sweeping. So if you're in a preschool or any kind of early years environment, a little tree horse with some small, child-size brooms, and then a little string on the top that they can hang them up. So, 5, 10, however many you can get. Rakes, if you've got leaves that are falling in autumn or any time of the year, or stones. Raking is heavy work. There's also the rope one that I showed you. Any big blocks. I show lots of things in the Power of Play course. Great big foam blocks that they can push over, pick up, that they can construct with. Any kind of movement. Interestingly enough, even yoga is classed as heavy work because the children, anything with resistance. So if they're using resistance, if they're pushing up to do cobra or they're pushing up to do a certain yoga asana, they're actually are doing heavy work. But I'm thinking more of outdoor things, wheelbarrows, get lots of wheelbarrows, shovels, spades, anything that where they can be using those muscles, those big muscles, pumping water, like we show in the Power of Play, a massive pump in Oman. And just before I go, I know that's the last question. What I wanted to say was the Power of Play International Conversations. There's 11 educators from around the world. You have Kimberly, who talks a lot about heavy work. She's the queen of heavy work in the British school in Tokyo, with children using massive tyres and ropes and things like that. We have Stuart from Tokyo. We have Celicia. We have Anne-Marie from England. We have someone from Oman, Neil. We have Sean Walker talking to us about Play and Playful from Paris. So I'm sorry I've missed out on a few people, but the 11 educators that I had conversations with also did PowerPoint presentations in that course to show us examples from around the world of play. So, yeah, I think you would get a lot of ideas from there too. But also Google heavy work and you'll also get, obviously they'll get different things that aren't to do with children, but maybe from a occupational therapy, heavy work perspective could, probably bring some ideas on the internet as well.
Mm-hmm. And Anthony mentioned having students involved in rearranging or reorganising the furniture is also another one that I remember when my son was that age, someone said to me, he sent me an interior designer because just moving the furniture around, he went to the centre that was just beautiful and allowing him to reorganise or reposition little chairs or tables as he felt the need to do so. It said every day Henry will come in and move some of the furniture. We'd go and visit people's houses and you'd see him picking up a chair and just moving it slightly over there to teach him that people don't always want their furniture reorganised, but letting them, move chairs and things and take responsibility.
Things around. Well, my son had sensory integration issues when he was a young boy, and the occupational therapist said, right, when you walk to school, which we did, you put some really heavy things in his backpack and he can carry that up the hill, which he did. And often parents carry bags for children, and all the teachers at the school would go, no, parents don't carry bags, children carry the bags. They carry that. And when he arrived, the teacher would say, right, Simon, there's some heavy hoses. You need to carry those and water the garden in the morning before school. So I'd get these heavy hoses and pull them and everything. Right, wiping the board down. So we do all that. And I tell you what, all that heavy work before he started at 9 o'clock, he was calm. He was, calm, focused and alert, like you're meant to be at that middle level, not hyper-aroused, not hypo-aroused, but right in the middle. So I think the person who asked about everyday activities, they're the kind of everyday things children carrying things, children, pulling those hoses to water or to cleaning the board or, helping whatever. But he also used to, when he would read, he would also go under the easel, and the teacher would say he just loves to be enclosed, under things. And she said, let him. If he wants to go under there and read, that's fine. So I think it's about being flexible as a teacher too, about children's needs and watching them and looking at them and thinking, maybe they're dysregulated and maybe that's what they need to do, because they're learning self-regulation. They're learning what suits them and what they need to do to feel calm and focused and alert. So, yeah, it's tricky as a teacher. It's not easy. You've got a lot of children in your class and you're trying to pick up on everybody's stressors and everybody's needs. But every behaviour has a need.
Yeah. Also, when a lot of children in international school context spend quite a bit of time on the bus in the morning and spending that time traveling, they've been sitting for quite a long time.
Yes.
So once they arrive, they actually need that time to do that quite physical things before they're ready to do any kind of morning meeting or sitting.
Yes,
first.
that's so true. And if they don't have very good core strength, they won't be able to sit, and they want to be laying back. They want to be, laying down. That's when the vestibular, system is stimulated and they feel comfortable laying down. That's why they sometimes will lay down, but they might not have the core strength to sit either. So that's why that heavy work and the rope pulling, the pushing down of the big foam blocks and things like that. Yeah, very important for us to always remember that children need those, not just a brain break, but a physical break to, restore energy. We might not think it's a way of restoring energy because that's not what we do necessarily as adults, but that's what children do.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I needed a rest and somebody asked me to go and drag the hoses out. I would appreciate it, but we have to understand that children's needs are different.
That's
Well,
right.
thank you so much, Jo Faye. It's wonderful to be able to connect with you and this importance of children being able to self-regulate and teachers being able to read and understand their stresses is, I think, more important than ever. And thank you to all of you who have showed up to join us. It's because you continue to show up and engage that we continue to offer these masterclasses. I saw a question earlier to someone said, is there another one next week? Not next week, but we do have a masterclass every month. So if you're on our website, you can subscribe to those masterclasses so that you're always signed up for them. And we will release a replay of this masterclass. Tomorrow is a public holiday in New Zealand, so it won't happen tomorrow. The team who do that will be back in the office on Monday, and they will send out the recording of the masterclass. And so then you can share it with any of your colleagues who missed it, or if you want to rewatch it, that will be available for you. So thank you, everyone.
How long is it available? Rachel, how long is it available for?
It's usually available for, it's either 7 days or 2 weeks. Maybe it might be 14 days, actually, for 14 days so that you have time to rewatch that.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. Lovely to connect with you, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, everybody. Great to meet you all, virtually anyway. Have a lovely day, evening, whatever it is. Thank you.